Hi boys and girls, today we're going to talk about reducing fractions. To reduce a fraction means to put it into lowest terms, and the way that you do that is you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. That number should be the greatest common factor. What does all of this mean? We've talked about greatest common factors. We know what those are and we know how to find them. But let's talk about reducing for a second so we understand why it's important. Let's say, for example, tonight I decide to just go totally crazy and make cake for dinner. There are 4 people in my family, so I have to make 4 cakes. Every person is going to get their own cake to eat for dinner. I love cake. I'm going to make vanilla cake, by the way, and I want you to tell me tomorrow what your favorite kind of cake is. For my family, we're going to have yellow cake, and I like to put a little bit of sprinkles on top. Every person gets their own cake. So I have 4 people in my family: myself, my husband, Grace, and Emma. I'm going to let each person decide how they would like to split their cake into pieces. Now, I'm going to show you an example of what this will look like. For me, I'm just going to dig right in. So this is going to be my cake. I'm not even going to cut it into pieces. It's going to be one whole, and I'm just going to dig in with my fork. Forget pieces. My husband, though, he doesn't really want to eat a whole cake. So he knows he probably could eat about half of a cake. So he's just going to cut it into 2 pieces. So this is what his cake will look like. Now, Grace, on the other hand, she's not quite as big. Her stomach's a little smaller. She thinks she could probably cut it into 4 pieces and just eat 1 piece at a time there. Okay, so she's got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces making up her whole cake. And then Emma, she's decided that she's going to cut hers up into 8. So she's got 8 pieces making up her whole cake. Okay, now I've not changed the size of our cake. The cakes are all the same size. I used the same pan to make these cakes. But let's just say, for example, that everybody ate half of their cake. So what that would look like for my husband is this part right here is what he ate. And what that would look like for Grace is this part right here is what she ate. And for Emma, that would look like this. This is the part right here that she ate. Well, they all ate the same amount of cake because the cakes were the same size, but the amount of pieces that they ate were different. You can see that my husband here, he ate 1 piece of cake. Grace ate 2 pieces of cake, and Emma ate 4 pieces of cake. So Kevin ate half the cake, Grace ate 2/4 of the cake, and Emma ate 4/8 of the cake. Those sound like different fractions, and they are different numbers, but they're all the same size. This is called equivalent fractions. And the way to find equivalent fractions is to learn how to reduce a fraction. So let's look here. I've got 4/8 and I've got 1/2. 4/8 equals 1/2. You can see that 1, 2, 3, 4/8 is the same size as 1/2. The orange shaded area is exactly the same. The numbers are different, but the fraction is the same. The reason is because if you take 4/8 and you divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, and I found out that the greatest common factor of 4 and 8 is 4. 4 is the biggest number that goes into 4 and 8 evenly. And so the greatest common factor of 4 and 8 is 4. So I'm going to divide my numerator and my denominator by 4. When you divide 4 by 4, you get 1. And when you divide 8 by 4, you get 2. And so you can see that 4/8 divided by 4/4 equals 1/2. So 4/8 equals 1/2. So reducing does not make a fraction smaller. It does show the smallest numbers possible to represent a fraction. when we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, whenever we're doing anything with a fraction, it's important to reduce whenever you can to make the fraction into lowest terms. This makes a fraction easier to work with. I'm going to show you how 2/3 and 4/6 are the same. If you take 4/6 and 2/3, they're the same. They are equivalent fractions. And when I reduce 4/6, I come up with 2/3. I want you to write down the greatest common factor for 4 and 6, because 4/6 is my fraction. If you wrote down 2, you're correct. 4 and 6 can both be divided by 2. And when you divide 4 by 2 and 6 by 2, you come up with 2/3. For your practice problem, I would like you to reduce 2/8 and 4/6. You're going to need to find the greatest common factor and divide the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator, by the same number. Okay, so you're going to follow this model right here. You'll draw your line, make it a little bit longer than normal, write your fraction that you start with, and then divide by that greatest common factor for the numerator and denominator, and you'll come up with your total answer, your lowest term fraction. Will you please make sure you circle your reduced fraction?